So, Dan, apparently you're mad I made fun of you. Did I make fun of you?
Oh, at every possible opportunity.
I don't remember doing any of that.
Brian, I'm so glad you're here. Now we can do an episode without all of Dan's bad takes.
Well, yeah, maybe.
I'm so glad that Dan's off at his dumb ghost thing.
How was your dumb ghost thing?
My dumb ghost thing was pretty cool.
We talked about that, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, maybe that last time you didn't know what I had said. It hadn't aired yet. Apparently it has aired now.
It has, and I've listened to all three of them.
Oh, wow. You listened to our podcast?
I was bored. I didn't have a good audiobook queued up, and so in the commute here, I was like, this is one of those Brian episodes.
Brian's fun. Brian did such a good job.
Brian is great. And to be fair, you could not have done the steak episode with me. Because I don't have enough informed opinions about it. I would have been like, yum, me like steak. Though I did think it was interesting. You had the three types of steak.
Yes.
Which are what? Filet,
ribeye, and New York.
And New York.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, Brian's a filet guy, you're a New York guy, I'm 100% a ribeye guy. So
we could have had a steak quorum.
Yeah.
Like we had a fantasy authors quorum that one time where it's like the different steaks are represented. And don't give me any talk about all these other cuts that aren't steaks, right? Like people are like prime rib, you can usually get that. Prime rib can be very good.
Prime rib is delicious.
It's not a steak.
It's not steak.
Yeah. So food heist.
Ooh, boy, do I ever.
You hyped me for this food heist.
Yes.
You promised me something was happening. While you're doing it, I'm going to be eating something that somebody sent to you.
To me? That seems about right.
It was sent to us.
Last year, somebody sent me a bunch of ding-dongs, and Joy in our warehouse sent me a text that said, hey, somebody sent you some ding-dongs. They're almost gone now.
This one, it was open, and they were mostly eaten. But they are the delicious Japanese Kit Kats, which are the strawberry ones, which are the best of their flavors.
Very nice.
And it's Tristan. He said, Brandon and Dan saved you some. Enjoy. So you tell me the food heist, because your mouth can't be full of delicious
strawberry Kit Kat.
But mine can be.
Okay, so this is one that I have been sent approximately 4,000 times by alert listeners to our show.
Okay.
This happened last week in London. This is the Great Cheese Robbery.
What kind of cheese?
Cheddar. 3 different kinds of cheddar.
Wow.
Very posh cheddar. Very upscale cheddar. Somebody stole 22 tons of upscale cheddar. Comes out to around $390,000. So
wow,
not as much as you would expect posh cheese to be when we're talking 22 tons of it. But it wasn't a heist. It was a fraud.
Okay.
It was one of these where a guy showed up pretending to be representative of a French supermarket chain.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, we really want to feature your cheeses in our store. The cheese supplier, Neil Yard's Dairy, they were super excited about this.
Yeah.
And they were bragging to all their friends that this French grocery store wanted their cheese. And then they never paid him, and they never paid him. To their credit, Neil Yard's, that got defrauded out of 22 tons of cheese, they did pay all their suppliers in full.
Wow.
Which is really nice.
Good for them.
Yeah.
I'm glad that
they wanted to be the good guys here.
Yep.
And they do note at the very end of the article that the Neil Yards guys said, and I got to read this, they said, it'll be a great action comedy. Maybe we can sell the rights and get some of our money back.
They think like we do.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
They immediately went to storytelling on this one, which I love.
I don't know what you call the person who stole the cheese, but there's definitely going to be some people in between that knew about this, and they would be the cheddar abettors, right?
For aiding and
abetting. Yeah. But man, my head keeps going to cheeseburglar, which is just too easy a pun, and also a McDonald's character. But whoever these people are, 22 tons, they should feel ashamed of themselves. We don't normally say this about the food heist,
We don't.
but simply defrauding people
Defrauding people out of cheese.
with just a normal contract and things like this. Like, you didn't have to go put your life on the line. You did not have to swim underwater to a giant metal bell filled with. You didn't
have to assemble a crack team of quirky misfits.
No going out during a storm to kidnap gators.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, you just lied with a French accent.
Lied with a French accent.
Got away with $390,000 worth of cheese.
So, normally not going to say this, but I think I say shame on you.
Shame on you.
And we know that the company
fraudsters
was moral and upstanding. So
yeah. They arrested a 63-year-old man, questioned him, and he's been released on bail. So whether he is a suspect or just somebody they think knew something, that's all we know. Like I said, this happened on maybe a week and a half ago.
Okay.
A couple days before Halloween.
Okay. Well, it's a very big deal, like you said, but lots of people have been sending it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about this.
What is this?
Organic sweet potato snacks.
Sweet potato, I will say, is the worst of the potatoes.
It says, so here's this person, Wyatt, listened to our episode where we ragged on sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
And Wyatt says, too long didn't read, candied yam bad, sweet potato good. Here, good sweet potato you eat.
Oh, okay. Too long didn't read, also too long didn't write.
Yes. The context is everything. Context of candied yams, I cannot fault your revulsion. Possibly the worst thing you do to sweet potatoes eliminates natural charm. And can it? Assaulting the tragic paste with marshmallow fluff is essentially corpse desecration. Good writing in this letter from Wyatt, by the way. And we have been sent these things. I think they look utterly repulsive.
Yeah.
But, I mean...
Like, when we bagged about sweet potatoes, did we make sure to also bag on, sweet potato fries? Because they're the worst kind of fries.
Are you willing to try one?
I am the person who earlier today brought a bunch of crickets into the office and asked people to try those. So I can't turn my nose down at what looks like a gummy worm.
Yeah, it's 100% sweet potato, it says. It's just... Wow, that's not gross.
That's because it doesn't taste like anything.
It doesn't taste like anything.
This is shockingly flavorless.
There's a bit of an aftertaste that tastes like sweet potato.
That's weird.
See, I'm going to give
really weird.
I'm not going to give it a thumbs up because I actually don't like the flavor of that aftertaste.
Mm-hmm.
Before, what was this person's name, Wyatt? Before, it just tasted like kind of a gummy.
Yeah.
If I'm forced to consume sweet potatoes, Wyatt, you have proven me that there is a form that I would prefer over others, but I still don't like it.
If it had a bunch of salt on it, maybe?
Maybe. If you dried it and salted it?
Nah, I don't know.
But I'm actually impressed that he sent these to us to try. Because, this is from a sweet potato advocate. So therefore, I now know that there are no forms of sweet potato that I would actively choose. And my understanding and knowledge of the world has increased because of Wyatt's willingness to try to share.
Yeah. And thanks to him, we know that the best sweet potato offering he could come up with still tastes like...
sweet potato.
Yeah. To the extent that it tastes like anything at all. It mostly tastes like air gel.
Yeah, and a little bit of that sweet potato flavor, which is basically like sugary dirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do want it known for the record that I absolutely cannot open these Kit Kats.
Do you need some help?
I have.
Do we need paid,
chewed
unpaid
the
intern?
corner off. And it's given me a little hole here that is still too small to extract a Kit Kat
Donald,
from.
get that open and then pre-chew a bit for him.
Sounds good.
So that Grandpa can.
Oh, see, he's got a box cutter. I could open it with a box cutter.
Hey, you just said get it open. I was just found an effective way to do it. There you go. You also broke it in half.
Well, it's
Well, that's
because
what
I
you
thought
do
maybe
with
I
a
could
cat.
get them out of the little hole if I did that, but the little hole was too little. And the thing is that I watched you open it
Yes.
as if it were nothing,
Mm-hmm.
como si nada.
I mean, I think the super glue we put on yours might have been involved. So, I thought we would talk about Jaws today because I saw your shirt and I know you have a deep and abiding love for Jaws.
I do.
Beyond my love, I think, of any film ever. And I have some that I really like. But I know that Dan plus Jaws is just,
Yeah.
it goes beyond normal love of a property.
It is my very favorite movie.
Mm-hmm.
I have taught classes on it. It was the first watch a movie with Dan that we did at Nexus these many years ago. And started the tradition that we still continue doing.
Yeah, before you were employee of the company. Back when it was just like,
Yeah. Kara reached out to me, or maybe it was Kellen, and said, hey, we're doing a convention. Do you want to do some panels? And I'm like, can I make everyone watch a movie with me? And so here we are.
Have you ever watched it in water?
I've never done that. There are showings where they will show it at like a big outdoor thing, like a pool, and you sit in inner tubes and watch it. Haven't done that.
I mean, I think you need to do one of those. It has to be in the ocean, right? It needs to be on a pier.
I wanted to do a watch along on a cruise ship on one of the Writing Excuses cruises and teach my class on it. We ended up doing my movie instead because we could get the rights to that one.
That.
So we did Serial Killer instead of Jaws.
Has it, like, would you go watch Jaws if it were projected onto a thing and you were floating in an inner tube in the ocean in near a dock at night?
Oh, I would.
Yeah.
100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I've heard that night is when sharks, go hunting. And, like, there could be a shark underneath you. In a pool, there's no shark.
Yeah. No.
That wouldn't really scare me.
If they were specifically sharky waters off, like, one of the Hawaiian Islands or something.
I mean, it doesn't even need to be that. Off of California, like, there's great whites out there. I don't know if you've seen the pictures, the drone shot footage of the sharks that just kind of prowl along the coast, and there's always people swimming, and the sharks normally just leave them alone. But what drones have let us see how close sharks are often to people who are swimming, to the point that watching Jaws on that pier, just, in California, there is like an almost, it's almost impossible that a shark at one point have swum past where you were watching that movie. So would you?
I would.
This should be a life goal for you.
This is a good time to point out sharks are not a fraction as dangerous as the movie Jaws leads us to believe that they are. The author of the book, Peter Benchley, basically ended up dedicating his life to shark preservation.
Yes.
Because he felt so guilty.
But he did write another giant sea animal kills people book after a while.
He? Which one?
Yeah, he wrote one called Beast about a giant squid.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Right? It's like, well, what people want from me is this. And that was like 2 decades after Jaws. So, but maybe he picked something that was not so, like, people aren't out there destroying this giant squid populations in the same way.
Well, I mean, it's only in the last 5 or 6 years we've got, like, physical sightings of giant squids, right? Up to then, we only knew them by reputation.
Okay, so you got your Jaws show that you're watching on the water.
On the water.
On the water at night. Do you stop halfway through and have some people chum the water?
I wouldn't chum the water.
You wouldn't chum the water.
But if I were in charge of it, I would feel very strongly that maybe I should have somebody go swim around and, like, tickle people's feet.
Would you have someone paid to dump what is not chummed water, but imitation, like it looks like it's chummed water, and then restart the film, just, to add to the illusion and the... Yeah.
I don't think we'd even need to stop the film.
Okay.
Right? Like, it would be like a showing of Rocky Horror Picture Show where just at key moments, the kid asks for coffee ice cream and we pass around ice cream. And the guy's there chumming the water and we start throwing stuff in the water.
That's
guy
right near the end, so
I got
that's
my
good.
wife's pot roast for Sunday, and then we throw a pot roast into the ocean.
Chumming the water instead for Sunday dinner partakers.
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose I should ask why you love Jaws, because people might click on this, and then we might not actually get to
We might not actually say it.
say why Dan loves Jaws. Maybe we should do the actual writerly thing.
The thing is, it is one of the most beloved and heralded movies, I think, that we have in our canon. It
Right.
is, and so it's not a weird thing to like Jaws.
No, it's one of the Holy Triumvirate, right? Of the three 70s films that took what were considered grindhousey and or B-movie premises to be elevated by that new generation of auteur filmmakers who were rebelling against the system and wanting to take the things they loved when they were younger and dedicate true artistry and storytelling mastery to them, right? Jaws, Godfather, and Star Wars, right?
Yeah, taking these ideas of let's do a horror movie, but let's do it in a very different way.
Let's do a horror movie and let's have actual powerful characterization and these beautiful scenes, well written, and also all the horror movie stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I definitely don't want to badmouth horror movies. I am a fan of horror movies and slasher movies. This came out during the 70s. It was 1976, or was it 75? Now I've just lost all my cred. I think it was 75. But that was when there was a huge rash of, the first big Wes Craven renaissance of the slasher, the rise of the slasher film.
That didn't happen until the 80s, right? That was after Halloween, which kicked it off. And Halloween's like late 70s, isn't it? Donald, when's Halloween?
When did Halloween come out?
Yeah, original Halloween.
Halloween.
It's like that's the founding of the slasher genre.
1978.
78.
So
So
slasher genre starts in 78.
Yep.
Post-date Jaws.
Yeah, and
So that's good.
Would you count Psycho as a horror movie, or would you put it with the rest of the Hitchcockian suspense? Or is it like first...
I think it is definitely more of a thriller than it
okay.
is a horror movie.
Okay.
Like the original Psycho, Alfred Hitchcock Psycho?
Original Hitchcock
what
Psycho.
I'm asking is, were there non-B-movie horror offerings before, like, Jaws, which is Jaws a horror movie?
You can make an argument that it is.
I mean, it's definitely the movies that it took that it turned into, Jaws, its inspirations were all horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
So were there horror movies that were not B-movies before Jaws? That's my question. Can you think of one?
Ooh, probably. Boy.
Because I don't think I can, but I am not as much of a film buff as you
Yeah,
are.
and I don't know I'm going to get the years wrong is the problem.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I
we
can
got him.
think of a bunch of I would say French and Spanish movies.
There's always some French movie
They were doing horror movies.
that kicked off a genre
real.
before Hollywood discovered it. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. Because when is like one of those weird 60s ones and things that are kind of slasher movies, but not quite.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right. I know some of those. Okay. So there you go. But would they be considered B movies?
Well, how are we classifying a B movie?
That's a good question. I would call a B movie a movie that did not have the budget required to get state-of-the-art special effects, actors that by themselves are a draw, and or directors that are themselves a draw, and wide distribution is what I'm going to call an A movie.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And I do not know enough about foreign film to determine, I think foreign film, probably a lot of them fit into a category that's none of those things. But I don't know enough to say if things like, what's that one? They did a remake of it lately about the ballet.
Black Swan?
No, it's like Suspiria.
Oh,
or
Suspiria, yeah.
Suspiria. When was the first Suspiria?
1977.
Okay, so that's post Jaws, but I think that's part of an entire sort of European horror film genre. But I don't know if they were B movies in their markets or not. That's the thing that I can't decide.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about Jaws
Yeah.
is that by those criteria, with the arguable exception of its lead actor,
Yes.
and the lady that plays his wife, those two were a big deal.
Yes.
Jaws is definitely a B movie.
I don't think it is. What's the budget? What was the budget for Jaws?
Budget on Jaws is $9 million, and it is over budget from its original $4 million.
Anything in the millions
$9 million
in that
$9
era
million for
in
budget
1975
is a movie.
Is a
It's
huge
true.
movie.
I mean,
Yep.
you got Robert Shaw and everything.
Yeah.
See, I want to call it a B movie though because those are the aspirations that I feel it had.
So if I can interject, if only because you're right, what are we counting as a B movie?
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, the year
Okay.
before, 80,000 for its budget.
Yeah, that's
Made-
definitely a B movie.
Okay.
Yeah, and it made 30
I see
mil.
where we're going here.
Yep. So I think that what I'm arguing here is that, yes, all three of those, and this isn't my argument. This is smarter than me, people who know about cinema, saying this was the era where things that had been B movies watched by teens and younger kids that they loved, they wanted to then make, but with mature storytelling.
Yeah.
So it's not a B movie any more than I think Star Wars is a B movie, but the serials Star Wars was based on were B movies.
Okay.
Right? And the gangster films that the Godfather, not the book, but the movie was kind of was based on were B movies. And the Monsters Attack giant tarantulas movies that Jaws is using as inspiration was a B movie. And this is a maturing and taking and developing that.
Yeah, which is kind of what the 70s were known for.
Yeah.
To your point, I think if we're going to use those criteria, then yes, it is not a B movie itself, but definitely inspired by them, definitely using those tropes.
Yeah.
Have you watched the Patrick Willems video where he talks about Jaws?
I have.
He does a really interesting thing where he's like, because the lore behind Jaws is that it's as good as it is because their shark didn't work.
Right.
And so he had to be more artistic, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And Willems goes through this pretty interesting kind of takedown of that rumor.
The idea, correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a while since I watched it, but his conclusion and or premise seemed to be, no, Jaws is a great movie because the filmmaker is great enough to know when to show the monster and when not to. And it's not that, the monster being broken forced him to become a great filmmaker. He was a great filmmaker and is a great filmmaker. I mean, this is Spielberg. This is my favorite filmmaker of all time, right?
Spielberg is.
Yes.
Okay.
And I do not think it is a controversial opinion to name him one of the greats, right?
Yeah.
It does not have to be people's favorite, but he's my favorite. And so, I agree with that premise.
Yeah. And that is a very good premise. I do think that had the shark worked, we would have seen the shark more often, and we probably would have gotten a full reveal earlier. That may have ruined the "we need a bigger boat" scene, which is one of the most famous lines and scenes in movie history. But in general, I do think that the movie still would have been great. This is, like you say, one of our greatest directors finally being given a budget, finally being given an opportunity to make something, and it's all there on the screen. You can see he's very, very good at doing what he does.
Yes, he is. So would you say, let's see, so is Jaws your favorite screenplay?
Favorite screenplay?
Right. Like if you're looking at just the screenplay, what is the strongest screenplay in your opinion if you're looking at just the writing? I can say that I think mine is Die Hard.
Okay.
I think is the single strongest screenplay if I'm looking at just the writing. And I have read the screenplay of Die Hard, but you don't have to have read this. Like if you're just looking at the writing, right? Like certainly there are fantastic things about Die Hard that require the cinematography and the acting to pull, but just on a writing level, that's the screenplay that I admire the most.
Yeah, I definitely love the Jaws screenplay. It the 7-point structure thing that I teach all the time for outlining. It follows that, but in 2 chunks. The first half and the second half both follow it flawlessly, and you can kind of sort of map it over the top as an overarching beginning and end thing. But really, it's 2 different mini movies. If I were to pick the best screenplay, I'd be very tempted to say Back to the Future,
Okay.
which I think is
It's a really solid.
an incredibly solid scrray.
I mean, the Oppenheimer screenplay, which I went and read after I watched the movie, and you still haven't seen it.
Still haven't seen it.
Oppenheimer screenplay is amazing. But it's like amazing in this artistic way that I feel like only Nolan could film that screenplay because, he wrote it. And make it work. Whereas I feel like the really strong screenplays, it's like the screenplay evokes the story to the point that, yes, you do need the marriage of the great filmmaker and the great screenplay, but do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
Back to the Future is the same way. If you take that exact same screenplay and you have another very talented filmmaker make it, I think you end up with a film that is largely going to be the same quality.
It's a solid screenplay.
Yeah.
One of the only screenplays that I have read, in script form is actually Unforgiven.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman. Have you seen that one?
I have. I haven't read the screenplay, but yeah.
Screenplay is phenomenal.
That is a really good movie.
Yeah. The screenplay reads much more prose-like than a lot of other scripts. And like I say, I haven't read a ton of them, but that one really stands out to me as well as a fantastic script.
Okay. So I was just kind of searching for is your love of Jaws, the structure, is your love of Jaws, the acting, the cinematography, or is it more like all of the package together for Jaws is greater than the individual elements, and that is what makes you love Jaws?
Basically, it comes down to lots of different things. It has some of the best scenes, and I will point out as 2 specific ones, the Indianapolis scene where he tells the story of the sharks, and that's basically just a monologue with some reaction shots. And then also the scene where they throw the Sunday roast into the water and the dock breaks away and then turns around and comes back towards the shore. There's a lot of really brilliant, wonderful scenes in the movie. Those are the 2 that I always call out. So the quality of the filmmaking in it is just brilliant and wonderful. The performances are fantastic. It is a movie that almost more than being about a shark and being about the people terrorized by the shark, it's a movie about male bonding, which you can see in the Indianapolis scene, in the entire second half when it's just 3 people on a boat. But you can also see early on with his relationship with his children, the way, the scene at dinner where he starts mimicking his son and making the same faces because the son is mimicking him.
Right.
It's a scene that takes male relationships and really allows them to get very intimate and tender, which you don't often see in movies.
It's really interesting because Spielberg is so good at this. Right? And the example I like to use is comparing Jurassic Park to Jurassic World. And Jurassic World, this is not to throw shade at, is it Trevorrow who did Jurassic World? But it is making Jurassic Park without Spielberg. And Jurassic World's a fine movie. Jurassic Park is an amazing movie. And it's unfair to compare anyone to Spielberg, right? But it is those touches that in Jurassic World, when they're put in, they feel a little saccharine and or they feel perfunctory. But in Jurassic Park, they are the actual story. The story of Dr. Grant learning that he could actually be a parental figure and not just scare a child with a claw, but actually come to their defense. is the story. You know, there's
Yeah.
several of them, but that's what makes Jurassic Park. It is not monsters are eating us. It is I, who am afraid of fatherhood, must take a parental role for these children and see how brilliant and bright they are and want to have that nurturing role with them.
Yeah.
That's what Jurassic Park why it works. And Jurassic World is about monsters eating people.
Yeah. Well, and that specifically was added by Spielberg to the movie. It's not in the book.
It is not.
In the book, Grant loves kids because anyone who loves dinosaurs must be good in his book. And so, yeah, that is kind of very specifically what Spielberg wanted to add to it when he said, okay, I'll make another monster movie.
Yeah.
The other thing that I do want to say about Jaws is just to get back to the structure. It is flawlessly structured. The 7-point, the Hollywood formula that you follow of and I don't know if we've talked about Hollywood formula much on the show. But formula is such a dirty word for a lot of people because they're like, oh, this. If we talk about formula, that implies something is formulaic, which we know is bad. Formula is basically just a recipe. Recipes, you don't hate food because the chef used a recipe for it. That's a very silly way to look at food. If someone uses a recipe poorly, if someone leans too heavily on cliche, then yes, it can become problematic. But most movies that you watch follow something called Hollywood formula religiously closely, and even the really good ones that you love.
To the point that, and sometimes disconcerting, and they may go a little far on this, you can put on some movies simultaneously, and they will have scene cuts at the same point, and they will have characters approach the camera at the same points, and they will have explosions at the same points. And it wasn't like they were sitting and trying to mimic that. They're not looking and saying, we need one at this second. It is the formula evokes this idea that right here you need something and you do something.
Yeah.
And some of them do get formulaic because of that, but it is interesting that you can do that.
You can. In fact, some movies, Jaws being one of them, you can watch with a stopwatch.
Yep.
And say 22% of the way through the movie, this thing is supposed to happen. Click. Yep, it just happened on the screen. Jaws is a little weird because, like I say, it's
twice.
two mini movies rather than one overarching story. But little things like what does the main character want? What is lacking in his life? He doesn't fit in on the island. What is the final line of the first half of the movie? His wife says, "Home where?" And he says, "Home here," because that is. He has come to terms with it. He is finally at home on this island where he is an outsider. And so all of the pieces come together, and not in a way that feels formulaic, but just feels very organic, feels as if it has to happen that way because of course it would.
I like to put stories that on their surface don't seem to fit together, meaning the whole idea that a buddy cop movie and a romantic comedy often follow the same sort of things. I just realized that Jaws is in part that story that gets told all the time. They did a Mandalorian episode of the Ronin who comes to town and becomes the defender of the common people.
Yeah.
That is kind of the story of Jaws, right?
That is one of the things that it's telling.
Right?
Yeah.
Like Jaws is kind of Seven Samurai. But it's more, there's another archetype of this where it's not, the seven, it's the one person who becomes, it's the Western about the wanderer who then finds a home.
Yeah. It's The Searchers by John Wayne.
Yeah.
Coming in, being the outsider, saving the town.
Yeah. In the actual Westerns, he would have to leave at that point.
Yeah,
but
he would leave at the end.
A lot of this archetype, they don't. They become the protector, and they find love and place there.
Yeah,
so.
and part of his whole character arc is, this is my home now.
The Mandalorian episode that I wish were better, the one I want the most from, is that story, and they just could not do it in 30 minutes. effectively. Have you seen The Mandalorian?
I watched season 1.
It's in season 1.
Is
It's
it?
the
Yeah.
third or fourth episode.
It's there's a Imperial Walker in the woods terrorizing this
Oh,
town.
yeah, I remember that episode.
And if that had been in 90 minutes, it would be the best, Star Wars media to come out since, Return of the Jedi. But it's not, and so it actually falls a little on its face, in my opinion, because it just does not have the time to do this brilliant premise about the Wanderer who is tempted to put down his mask and become, and all of this, and teaches the people and defends the town in that classic sort of structure way. It would be a really great episode, but instead, got to get it done in the time.
They had to skim over a little too much to really make it work.
Yeah. Well, that was a fun episode, Dan.
That was a fun episode.
Yeah.
See what happens when we grasp at straws. How's that, Ben?